Good evening. I'm Sarah Cabrera. I'm the EEO and Title IX Compliance Manager for the Baltimore City Public Schools, and I'm going to be presenting to you today our proposed new policy. It's called the JBB policy. It is the Sex Discrimination Student Policy. There is a sign-in sheet roaming around, so if you wouldn't mind very much to sign in. It asks for your name and your organization. If you don't have an organization, that's fine, but we'd like to capture who was here today. So I'm going to try to have this as much of a town hall as possible. We might, depending on how many questions we get or how many comments we have, we might have to establish a timeline, maybe 5 minutes per person. The first thing I'm going to do is run through the presentation. Some of you have been to the presentation before and you know what it's about. So, but for those of you that don't, I hope you learn what we're going to be talking about today in our proposal. So for about 15 minutes or so, I'm going to do this presentation, and I ask that you hold off your questions and your comments until after the presentation is completed, at which point I will move the microphone up to the front of the room, and you can come up one at a time to ask your question, or if it gets, we might do sort of a show of hands. If there's a lot of questions, we'll do the microphone in the front. If there aren't, I could go to each person. Any discussion that you have must be had into the microphone, because this is being recorded and is currently being live streamed and will also be available for future viewing on the City Schools website. Okay? So the proposed policy that I'm talking about today is JBB, JBBRA, so that's the regulatory part of it. JBB, the proposed policy discusses sex discrimination. Before I start, you have to know that this already exists in policy. There is already a sex discrimination policy in place for the school board. It's called the ACC. What JBB proposes is to expand on what already exists. The categories that are named in the JBB policy already exist in the ACC policy. So we're not reinventing the wheel with this policy. What we're doing is, I feel like this microphone is cutting out a little bit, sorry. What we're doing is really expanding on what currently exists, providing additional protections, and really defining things so to help clear up any sort of misconceptions or misunderstandings about what protections are afforded to students. So the first and most important part of the JBB policy is that for those of you unfamiliar with the way that the school board has its policies set up, they come in categories, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. And each letter represents a segment of the school system. So A, for example, is employee. All of our employment regulations or all employment policies are located in the A section. Those policies dealing with students, there's plenty of seats right here up front if you like. There's, don't be shy. There's all the student policies are located in the J section. So with moving the ACC policy over to the J section, it'll be easier to find, easier to locate for students and families. That's the most important one. And then again, it expands on protections that are already outlined in ACC. Title IX of the Education Amendments Act requires that we have a sex discrimination policy. It is required by federal law that we have such a policy. This policy extends beyond just simply sex discrimination and now includes discrimination based on sex, sexual violence, sexual orientation, and gender identity. So discrimination on sex means on purpose, you can't do this because you're a boy, you can't do that because you're a girl, right? That's sex discrimination. Sexual violence doesn't need a whole lot of defining, any sort of act of aggression that involves some sort of sex act. Sexual orientation is who you want to date, who you want to be in a relationship with, who you love. And gender identity is how you identify to the public, regardless of your biologic sex. OCR mandates, that's OCR is the Office of Civil Rights under the U.S. Department of the Federal U.S. Department of Education, and it mandates that there be the identification of a Title IX coordinator, who is me right now. It requires notice requirements to you, to schools, to not just employees, but to students and parents through handbooks, through notification at the beginning of the year, confidentiality in the investigation of any sort of claim of discrimination, and it provides a timeline for completion of that investigation. So the policy updates discrimination and harassment. It establishes a clear complaint process. It makes students' discrimination and harassment policies easier to find, ergo moving over to the J section. And it develops a holistic approach to this. So currently, each school is relatively responsible for its own investigation, for its own, how it's going to handle the ACC policy. The JBB policy moves it over so that the district is more involved in any sort of investigation relating to that, in the reporting of it. This is to maintain compliance at the end of the year. We are required to report a lot of our complaints, our resolutions, things of that nature to the federal government. The JBB policy now includes this statement: the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners shall assure that each Baltimore City Public Schools student is protected from discrimination and harassment on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, marital status, disability, and pregnancy, known collectively as the protected categories, in its programs and activities. Those categories, again, are already in ACC. They already exist. They're already protected for in current policy. There's no addition. The definition of discrimination and harassment has been added to mirror MSDE's guidelines, the Maryland State Department of Education's guidelines. It revises gender expression, again, to mirror MSDE's. It also does that with transgender, transition, and cisgender. These are things that are not currently defined in ACC, but will be defined in JBB. So gender-based discrimination can be one of these: use of pronouns and names, the dress code, access to gender-segregated facilities, athletics and physical education, student records, and requesting a name or gender change. The new proposed policy provides that if a student says to their teacher, regardless of what their name on their official transcript says, my name is, I'm just throwing out a name because it's just easier, I think I used Charlene and Billy today, right? So on my transcript, I am Charlene, but I identify as male. So teacher, my name is Billy. Please refer to me as Billy. Under the policy, that is what would be expected from teachers, is that they would refer to that child as Billy. And if I say my name is Billy and my pronouns are he, his, and him, then you would use those male pronouns to address me. Dress codes. Students may dress in accordance to how they identify. A lot of schools have uniforms that are kind of unisex, right? So you wear a blue polo and khakis. That's not very sex-based, right? It isn't easy to differentiate what a girl's polo shirt looks like versus a boy's polo shirt, right? So that's one way. Another big thing is graduations are coming up, right? Proms are coming up, formals. So the schools still have the right to establish a dress code for their prom or for their formal. And if your principal says the graduation, dress for graduation is formal attire, right? That would be what would be expected, as opposed to saying it is formal attire, which means the girls will wear gowns and the boys will wear suits, right? That's not going to be around anymore. It is formal attire. And you could say formal attire all white, right? It's because I know a couple of high schools graduate in all white. So whatever formal attire is to you, as long as it's white and formal, that is what the dress code will be for that event. And then schools cannot be stricter on one over the other regarding dress code, right? So you can't require that someone, if you have decided that your uniform is going to be khakis and a polo shirt, whatever color polo shirt, you can't then make it make the girls wear a different color or a different set of pants, or make them wear a skirt and then punish them stricter or harder or discipline them if they choose to wear the khaki pants as opposed to the skirts. Access to gender segregated facilities. I know. This is we're going to talk about this one, right? The law. I'm not making it up. The law says you use the bathroom for the gender which you identify, regardless of what your biologic sex is. Doesn't matter. If I see myself as female and I present to the world as female, I am going into the female's restroom, because we are allowed to sex segregate. So we can say there's a female restroom, there's a male restroom. We are allowed to say that. That is an exemption to the law. What you're not allowed to say is, no, I don't think you're really a woman, so therefore you can't use the women's room, or prove that you're a woman and then you can use the women's room. That is illegal. So the bathrooms would be accessible to the gender, to anyone who identifies with that gender, regardless of biologic sex. Students who are uncomfortable using using a public restroom with, whether it be a transgender student or a cisgender student. Cisgender being, I identify as female, I present as female, and I am biologically female. That is cisgender. Or I'm male, I'm biologically male, I present as male. That means to be cisgender. Anyone who is uncomfortable with using a bathroom, a public bathroom this way, can avail themselves of school administration to use a bathroom in a single-use bathroom, a bathroom in the nurse's station, a bathroom in a private office, or some sort of alternative can be arranged. Maybe if it's in a locker room, setting up a changing station, with a curtain or a space off to the side that can be kind of curtained off or divided off so that there's privacy. But the key is that is available to everybody. You do not say, oh, only the transgender students get to use that single-use bathroom, or only the cisgender kids get to use the public restroom and not the private restroom. That would be illegal. They can, no student, regardless of cisgender or transgender, can be required to use a single-use bathroom or a private bathroom, or directed to use one. Athletics and physical education, this is another one that a lot of people have questions about. And I will tell you that this kind of protection is evolving, right? We don't always have all the answers right away. We're evolving, we're developing, we're doing what we best with the information that we have now, right? So, if a transgender child or transgender girl wants to play on the girls' basketball team, she plays on the girls' basketball team. When the team rosters are being exchanged between teams, the names of the students are on that. Not any identifying feature that one of the students on this team is a transgender student. That is not allowed. That is a privacy issue. It would only be, this is my team roster. Students are permitted to participate in physical education classes in a manner consistent with their gender identity. And I don't know if there is any more where you have like an all-girls gym class outside of the unisex school. No? There are? Recess is on purpose? Okay. All right. Well, you shouldn't, right? It should be if it's a unisex school, I get it, right? Or if it's a single-sex school, I should say, I get it. But in a unisex school where in a gym class, it's everybody goes to gym at third period, let's say, and we're playing volleyball or we're learning volleyball in gym, then that should be, there shouldn't be any division. There shouldn't be any singling out either. Each student's privacy rights and personal information regarding status, medical history, and sex assigned at birth cannot be disclosed to teammates. And again, so any roster, any information being exchanged should not include the transgender, the status of a student, other than this is the student's name and she or he is playing this sport. Student records. So on official student records, it is going, the name that appears on official student records is the name that you were signed into school, that you signed up for school with, right? And I'm not familiar if it's only the birth certificate that's used to sign you up to school, but that is an official document, and so your official legal name is going to be on that document. Day-to-day and how you are addressed in school is different. That's not an official document, right? So if a teacher can call you the name that you have identified as being yours, as belonging to you. And when it comes to school records, if you desire to change, if a transgender student, for that matter, any student desires to change their name, there are steps that have to be taken that are legally required to do so. And that is either producing a new or amended birth certificate, a dated court order signed by a judge or a magistrate, changing the name, or a statement from a healthcare provider indicating that the student is transgender and that this is now a new name assigned to this person, and this is the name that they're going to be known by. Now, this can be done after graduation as well. So if you want to come back and say, okay, I'm now no longer this person, and that could be important in like college transcript for college, for getting into college, seeking scholarships, things of that nature. So this is the regulation, and this is a contrast and compare of what currently exists and what will exist under JBB. So currently, ACC really only talks about sexual harassment. So sexual harassment of the individual based on any of the protected categories, right? And so this expands it to include sex violence and specifically any harassment dealing with, again, specifically gender identity or sexual orientation. In cases of student-on-student harassment, principals are mandated to do the investigation, and they don't do it with any oversight from my office. So JBB says that you have to. Not only does it still keep the requirement, the responsibility to the principal to conduct the investigation, but it requires that the principal alert my office, inform my office that a complaint came in or that there's an allegation of some sort of form of discrimination. And so the principal would conduct the investigation with Title IX coordinator oversight. And so, and that's a big change, right? So it kind of shifts it a little bit, so it's not kept strictly at the school level, and the district is involved to some degree. In cases of employee-on-student harassment, once more, the principal is notified, and then maybe it comes here, maybe it doesn't. It should come here. It should be investigated by my office. JBB says it will be investigated by my office. It also outlines what what steps I have to take. So I notify, who has to know about what's going on, and what the outcomes or potential outcomes of the investigation could be. Again, outlining the investigatory process in the ACC doesn't do a very good job. It doesn't go very in depth about how an investigation would look like. The JBBRA does, and it outlines specifically a time frame. It now creates a preponderance of the evidence. That means that it likelier than not happened, right? So it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Like criminal cases, it is more likely than not. So it's a 51% is what it's called, right? More likelier than not. It's a 60-day investigatory turnaround that includes interviewing everybody, getting this written up, and getting it passed through editing channels, and then getting it to human capital and labor relations. The ACCRA does not require students to be provided with contact information regarding the Title IX coordinator. OCR has said that you must inform students and parents of who that is and how to contact them, and that is provided for in the regulatory section of JBB. ACC does not require, does not instruct, or does not speak to training of teachers at all. JBB does, and indicates that all staff will be trained, and that training will be coordinated through my office. So far, besides you good people, these are the people that I've contacted with regard to this policy and requesting for some feedback from them. And this is my contact information, well, my email. But I'll gladly share my phone number with you if you want. All right? So that concludes my presentation on the JBB policies. And we're going to take, by a show of hands, how many people have questions? Okay, we can not. All right, here you go.
So my first question is about the pronouns. When there's a transgender student, will they be able to use the transgender pronouns, whether it's female or male, or will they be using we or they?
Can you hear me? Okay, so generally accepted is, and this is every day more and more, you'll hear people say, my name is Sarah Cabrera and my pronouns are she and her. And so if someone has identified that is, if I identify to you, my name is Sarah Cabrera and and my pronouns are she and her, then you will refer to me in female pronouns. But if I say, my name is Sarah Cabrera, I'm non-binary and my pronouns are mix or Ms, then that's how you would refer to me.
Wouldn't that be confusing with the standard subject-verb agreement when addressing a student or when writing? If you use we or they.
Hold on, somebody's going to provide an answer. Hold on.
The Oxford English Dictionary recognizes they as a singular pronoun, so it's now popular and accepted in colloquial use, and it is also accepted by editorial style guides and the Oxford English Dictionary. No, it's not confusing. If you say, someone hit my car last night, they knocked off my mirror, you mean that one person hit your car. You don't know if they're a male or a female or non-binary, so you say they. It's not confusing. It might take a little getting used to it. No, you say, they knocked off my mirror. If you say someone, okay, you can check the Oxford English Dictionary. Anyone have a non-binary friend or coworker? Did it take a little getting used to? Is it confusing?
I had a question about the sports part.
Sure.
So, I mean, genetically, regardless of how you identify and, you know, who you identify as, let's just say, and my daughter, let's just be clear, is LGBTQ. However, I would not want her competing athletically against a transgender male. simply because, again, even though they may have
Transgender female.
transgender female, they may have even gone through the process of having female parts and, so forth, so on, in which but genetically, males are still stronger and faster and so forth than females. So how would that be fair? Especially if my daughter plays basketball. So if you have this male, it's a reason why they separated all boys play, all females play. And don't get me wrong, there are some females who can beat males or whichever. But again, you don't know that. How would it be a weight class? Will it be, they're the right size, so they're allowed to play? I mean, how would you separate that?
Well, currently, the way that the anticipation for that is, if a person tries out for a team, and it's a single-sex team, right? So it's boys basketball, and the person identifies as a transgender male. So they were born female or assigned female at birth, but now identify as male. They would have to be able to, whatever the standard is to join the team, whether it's you do it by grades or you do it by year, right? You can be on the varsity team if you're a junior and a senior, or a senior and you have a B average, let's say. If they meet those qualifications, then they're allowed to play on the boys' team because they identify as male. And it isn't for the school administration or the coach to decide, well, really, you're not, you're this, you're that, you're the other. It is how the person identifies. It is what is currently, I know that there is a situation right now, and I want to say it's out in Virginia, where there are 2 girls, transgender girls, on a track team. And so this might be something that down the line gets decided by the Supreme Court, potentially.
But that's the thing. You've given all examples about female to male. What if there's a male to female? Again,
The same would apply.
I don't know if, and this is just speaking because I'm sure it's not all across the board. But like, again, if the female wants to run track, and that's different. But my daughter, again, it's a physical contact. I don't want her playing with someone the strength of, a male or whichever, even though they're not physically looking like one.
But the law says that that all that's required in order to join a sports team is that the person identify as whatever, if it's a single-sex team, that they identify as that, and that if they meet the qualifications, the grades, the school level, the age group, and whatever other criterion there is, then that's what has to happen. That is the information that we have available now. Will this change? Could this change? Potentially. But currently, that's what we have available. I feel like I should have worn my sneakers.
I just wanted to acknowledge your question and say that, though I think in the discussion we're missing something, I think we're making an assumption about people's biology. So when someone is assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth, I think we're making assumptions in this room about what their biology is, about what their, frankly, what their sex organs are on the outside, about what their reproductive organs are on the inside, and about what their hormone profile will be. That can vary widely, and scientists are now realizing that intersex conditions are incredibly common, and that there are as many intersex people as there are red-haired people. Right. So, right. So, so it's the fact that a transgender female could play on your daughter's team, like that transgender female may be smaller than your daughter, may have a weaker testosterone profile. Right. But that's also the reality with every other female on her team. They could also be smaller than her or larger than her. They could have a higher testosterone profile or a lower testosterone profile. You don't actually know if their genitals, like you don't know anything about their hormones, their genitals, their reproductive organs. You just know that they had some paperwork coming to school that said they were female. So I think that's just important to keep in mind, is that being trans is about gender identity. It's not about sexual identity. But like we just shouldn't make assumptions about people's biology either. You know, just because someone shows up at school saying they're a girl, we don't really know anything about their biology.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to that, in addition to the fact that there's just a wide variety of different types of people, and you can't assume that a trans woman is going to be stronger than any other woman, and a trans man is going to be any weaker than any other man. In addition to that, the NCAA doesn't have a problem with it. They already acknowledge Title IX requires them to allow you to play the sport according to your identity. And if college sports don't have a problem with it, I don't really see that our school system would have a problem with it. It hasn't posed any problems thus far. So I think that that's just acknowledging the diversity of humanity and allowing them to play sports as who they are.
Thank you. Question? Okay. Wait, use it because it's being
And I
recorded.
just want to be clear as well. It's not even so much, I'm not saying I don't want it to happen, so to speak. My thing is, I want to know how will we be clear on the guidelines as far as it being fair? Meaning, like you said, there are girls that are different sizes, but you know, like with football teams and boxing and things, there's weight class. Or they, you know, or it could be a situation where, so, you know, they have just guidelines to be able to differentiate or to make it where it's not.
Well, but,
Unfair.
and I can understand for like wrestling, there's weight class, for boxing, there's weight class, but I don't know, so I played ball and we didn't have a weight class.
No, they don't have
right?
it for basketball,
Yeah, but I will tell you that I played with girls that were like easily a foot taller than me and easily a foot shorter than me. And the girls that were a foot shorter than me played rougher and better than the 6'2" girls all day, every day, which is, you know, a little, it throws you off a little bit, right? Because you make this assumption based on my bias of, oh, all good basketball players must be 6 foot tall and must be able to, you know, dribble with both hands and with not looking at the ball ever. And then here comes this 5'7" girl who's just, you know, a rock star. So it can happen, right? It's individualized. It's by person. You can't. It is impossible to put an umbrella coverage on one person on a whole group of people when even for in the cisgender community you wouldn't do that, right? Because, you know, I might be able to play really good ball, you might not be able to play really good ball, or vice versa. That has nothing to do with that we're both females. It just has to do with a skill set that sometimes is just innate, right? That's not even developed. It's natural. You? Yes.
Well, I'm probably I'm either the second or third smallest in my class. I'm still one of the best at climbing.
Uh-huh.
And yeah.
So size does not matter? So is that what you're saying? Okay. Thank you.
All I was going to say is, so I hear your concerns, and I have a kid with physical challenges from a medical issue. So I worry a lot about her safety when she plays at school. So as another mom, I completely understand. I just wanted to say, though, that probably already, without us knowing, because it would be rude, there are children on teams today that have variable biology or whose outward gender appearance doesn't match their chromosomes. And so when we think about that, when we think about the fact that it is happening now, and most of us are blind to that, it isn't, if you can think about it that way, it maybe doesn't seem so frightening or unusual. And because we don't know and because it's improper to ask, the only other way would, people said, well, but men are XY and women are XX. But we know that that's not true either. There are people with hormonal challenges and genetic challenges, and so their genes don't match their biology. And so there isn't even a screening test, not that there should be one, but there isn't even a screening test to differentiate between people who are cis male, cis female. So I would ask people to console themselves with the knowledge that your kids and my kid go to school with kids right now who are trans or gender nonconforming or whose biology doesn't match their outward appearance, and you are none the wiser, and it makes our kids no less safe every day.
Thank you. Wait, hold on.
So I'm a transgender student myself, and I play on a girls' volleyball team. I identify as male, and I feel like if as long as you follow the rules and you play fairly, you should be able to play on whatever team you want. And I feel as though I should be able to play on whatever team I want to be, whether that be girls or boys, because I identify as male. And because I was born female doesn't mean that when I'm on the court playing whatever sport that I shouldn't be able to play on the boys' team because I'm weaker or I'm slower. That's not fair.
Thank you. Sorry, Stacy.
Because a lot of people do something doesn't make it morally right. So because everyone's that we go to school, the kids now go to school with people who are already trans and the other students don't know it, doesn't make it right. A lot of people smoke, doesn't make it right. A lot of people do drugs, doesn't make it right. The question is it morally correct? And then where does it end? We're allowing boys now to play with girls. Do we now allow boys to enroll in girls' school? What happens when we now make the bathrooms where boys can go into a bathroom with the girls because they identify as themselves as girls. So now we're putting our children's lives at risk for because we want to be accepting of everything. So
All right.
where does it end?
So let me just, I want to explain for, so currently, the law is very clear about bathroom usage, right? And I think a lot of, so just as an FYI, the law in the state of Maryland, the hygiene code in the state of Maryland does not state that only men shall use the men's room and only women shall use the women's room. It's not what the bathroom laws, if you will, it's the hygiene code of the state of Maryland say. It says if there is a men's room, there's a woman's room. If there's a woman's room, there's a men's room. If the men's room is unlocked and on the first floor, the women's room should be unlocked and on the first floor, and et cetera, things like that. We are allowed to segregate when it comes to bathroom usage. We are allowed to say only women will use the women's room and only men will use the men's room. This isn't men using the women's room or women using the men's room. This is a transgender male using the bathroom which they identify, using the bathroom of the gender which they identify, and that is male. If it's a transgender female, they're using the bathroom that they identify with, which is female. So it's not a question of men using women's room and women using men's room. Now, I know that there's a lot of concern. I hear this a lot about the usage of bathrooms, right? If you're going into a bathroom to use it to perform a biological function, you're committing no crime. There is no crime. You go in, you go into a stall, a locking stall, you perform a biological function, and you leave. You wash your hands, then you leave, right? Always, because that should be a crime, right? And so that is not a crime. But if you are hanging out, right, and exposing yourself or making advances at somebody or peeping or trying to peek over a door or under the stalled wall, that is a crime. That's different. And that has nothing to do with somebody being a transgender individual. It has that because I think that unfortunately there seems to be an association with some sort of sex deviance in the transgender community. And that is not what being transgender is. It's not a deviation of any sort of sexuality. And thank you very much for speaking.
Oh, you're quite
really.
welcome,
Thank
but
you very
I
much.
disagree with you.
Okay.
I'm not equating transgender to some creep who's going to go in the bathroom and look at people. What I'm saying is now you're opening the door to allow those creeps to go into the bathroom and do that.
Well, I don't know. I think that if you're a creep, you're going to be a creep, whether there's a law or not.
In order to make it easier for them to do so.
No, I don't because the protection is if we all identify as female, we're going into the female bathroom or women's room to perform this biologic function, right? And anything separate from that is an act that can be seen as a criminal act and should be reported. But what is stopping somebody who is not a transgender individual, who is cisgender, who is binary, who identifies as they are biologically, what is stopping them from going into a room, period, whether there's a law or not?
Somebody outside looking at them going into the girls' bathroom when they're a boy.
Right, so it would be the same.
No.
Well, no, because transgender, so so Fairness to All Marylanders Act in 2014, is what establishes transgender protections in the state of Maryland. And the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, in furtherance of that law, established a definition of transgender. And it is, I don't call it verbatim, but it runs along the lines of, it is a sincere, consistently held belief.
Persistent, consistent, and insistent. And
So
this
it's
is,
not like one day I feel like a girl because today they cleaned the women's room, so I'm going to go to the women's room. But tomorrow I know they're cleaning the men's room, so I'm going to identify as male because I want to use a clean men's room, a clean bathroom.
I guess I just think it's important to acknowledge that this is where teachers and principals come into play. In our school, a random boy who has never mentioned anything about having a trans identity is not allowed to walk into our girls' restroom. If they do that, a teacher will call them out and say, can you tell me what you're doing in there? And unless the child suddenly needed to see the counselor because they suddenly, then there would be a whole discussion of that, right? But other than that, then there's a discipline infraction. A child who is known by the principal and teachers to identify as transgender is allowed to use the restroom of their affirmed gender. Those are two different things. No child, it is not being tolerated for any child, teacher, adult, staff person, or visitor to go randomly walking into restrooms, obviously presenting as one gender and waltzing into another without other people in the building. I mean, people do still police it. I'm not sure they should, but they do. And so for the safety of children, they do.
You guys just said that people are walking around every day right now who have not publicly identified themselves as such. So you're saying someone should already know that their status. That's not the case.
No, that's not what we said.
If it's only because it's being recorded. If they have not identified, so I'm, let's say I'm biologically male, but I present as female, you have no, I'm going into, if I walk into the men's room, then the principal or staff member should be able to say to me, no, you go into the women's room. You look like a woman, you dress like a woman, you present to me like a woman, you belong in the women's room, not in the men's room.
There's not enough principals and teachers to monitor every bathroom in every hallway in the school
Have
buildings.
you asked any of principals or teachers if they're having problems at their school?
I think that's because our children actually go to the same school, and I think that's where the problem lies. Even like I said with the sports, it's like different for every school because every school operates differently. I mean, well, for one, our children's schools are all-girls school, so we wouldn't have the situation with males, and transgender. Well, they're not yet allowing transgender females to come in, but at the end of the day, like you said, our staff to child ratio, and we have one police officer at the entire school. We have, 2 or 3 administrators at the entire school. We have 3 assistant principals and 1 principal. Now, you're telling me that someone is supposed to be watching 24. I mean, what if after it's too late? I mean, and I'm just speaking on behalf of schools that don't have that type of support and resources to be able to watch all day, every day, 24/7 or so forth, so on. It's like what she said is we're not against the whole situation with the bathroom. It's like everything across the board is opening cans of worms, period. It's opening cans of worms because it's going to be one ripple effect and one after another. Like we even going back to the sports. Now, you are the one that said there can be some situations where a male can, or a female, I'm sorry, the female can be bigger than my daughter or whichever. That is absolutely true. So why even have co-ed sports? Why not just make it open for all and just allow everybody to play all the time?
It would be okay.
What if that, but could that not be a reality?
No, that's what
Could that not be a reality? It's so,
like, if we're going to start making these changes, it's going to be so many changes. Just like, again, my daughter goes to Western High School. She goes to Western High School. So you're telling me now is the tradition or the rules going to change where they allow transgender females to come to the school? And I'm not against that. I mean, not so much I'm not against it, but it's like, again, we're about to start changing a lot.
That's something that all schools all over the country are wrestling with, is figuring out how to handle this. I guess I'm concerned that so much of this debate is about concern for the safety of kids who are not transgender. I'm a city school social worker. I'm a city school's parent. And so much of the research that's out there shows that transgender kids are the ones who are at risk. And it's very important that we have policies that protect kids and keep them safe so that they can learn, so that they can focus, so that they can be successful. I think that's where our focus really needs to be.
I was gonna say about the bathroom thing. So if like a trans guy, right, they dress as a male and they appear as a male and they go by a male, they don't want to go in a girl's bathroom because if they do, everybody's gonna look at them like they're weird. So it's easier if they just go into the bathroom they identify as, because if they do that, they're not gonna get looked at or made fun of for going in the bathroom because nobody's really gonna know. And it's not like they're going in there to be creeps, and it's not like you can assume that every trans person or everybody who's part of the LGBT community or anybody who's non-binary is going to be a creep. You can't just say that, because that's just, it's just putting out, like, forgot the word, but like, yeah, it's a stereotype, yeah, because you're just saying that, oh, this person's going to be like this because how they identify. It's like, I'm non-binary, and it's, so if I go into a girl's bathroom, I get stared at for how the way I have my hair cut and how I dress. So I don't want to be in that. I don't want anybody else or anybody in that matter to be in a position where they have to be stared at or looked at funny because of how they identify and the rule is saying that they have to go in their biological sex bathroom.
Thank you.
I think I'm a trans adult. Personally, when I hear the moralist premise of, all right, well, if we have X amount of trans people who we can't keep track of, we're going into a bathroom, we're going to perpetrate some sort of heinous sex act or whatever. I want to say that typically sexual violence, let's say, enacted upon minors, usually that skews towards people who already know said minor or have previously committed crimes and are repeat offenders. These are people who are basically doing whatever they were doing anyway, regardless of whatever sort of risk they're going to run of the law. I think when we talk about allowing minors and enacting a bureaucracy or policy saying, here, you've come up to me, you've given me this identifying information, here's what I can do with it, versus people who are bad actors. Bad actors are going to exist whether or not a policy is set up anyway. You can't ban murder, you can't ban rape or any type of sexual violence, and without getting specific, we could enact laws. What it comes down to is people being vocal and people having policies in place. When people talk about maybe their morality or religion or philosophy informs why they're scared, what you have to look at is having this policy in place, having this bureaucracy in place, will only have a body of people to be held to account if there are bad actors. That's what you want. I mean, if you're concerned, you want rules, you want laws in place, and you also want people to talk to one another and say, okay, what do we need? I think it can be very difficult, but at the end of the day, if, whether or not you feel differently after today, these same people are still going to be here, are still going to exist in some capacity or another. And I think this will only help people identify and, sort out bad actors if it happens.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Honestly, I feel like all of this is unfair. And to me, what it sounds like is judging. I feel like it's our responsibility to make a transgender feel comfortable with who they are. They're already nervous enough walking outside, looking how they look, because they feel like, oh, I want to wear this today, but I'm afraid that someone may look at me like, why is she wearing that? Like, what's wrong with her? And that's unfair because my thing is you got to put it in your perspective. Can I use somebody's example, please? Dana, can I use your example? How would you feel if you were a transgender, meaning you're female, you decide, okay, I want to be a male. So you decide to wear nice suit, cut your hair nicely, present yourself as a male. How would you feel walking out the house?
Nervous.
Why would you feel nervous?
Maybe people would really see something that I don't feel like I am.
See, and I feel like that's unfair that we are making her feel that way. My thing is, us being the human beings we are, we shouldn't be bringing each other down the way we are. Like, you can't judge somebody thinking, oh yeah, I don't want my child around a transgender because what if my child gets beat up? Why would you even think like that? That's totally unfair. And you have this man here or woman, I don't know how he generalized himself, and I'm pretty sure he feels uncomfortable listening to this. And that's unfair. All of us in here should be making him feel good about himself. I'm so sorry. We should be making her feel good about herself, especially if she come to you and telling you, I want to be generalized as a female. Okay, respect that.
It's fine. I didn't take my meds. I'm just nervous because there's a room full of people. We're all it's fine.
She's nervous. There's a room full of people.
I understand how you feel. I am nervous too, because one thing, I have trouble with trying to bring my point across. But I feel like it's unfair, and all of this is our fault that we're making them feel this way. That's not fair. Come on now.
I attended a college that had mixed gender bathrooms that included showers and bathroom facilities. In the 4 years I attended that college, all the years I've stayed in touch with people who've attended that college, never has there been an incident of someone deciding to go into that restroom and be creepy because they can. I think someone else brought it up earlier, but the issue of violence around restrooms, you can't find issues of people dressing up to pretend to be another gender to go into a restroom to hurt somebody. You can find endless examples of trans folks being forced to use the wrong bathroom and being injured. If this is about a concern about safety, let's actually look at the data and make the right people safe.
Hello? There we go. That's nice. Yeah, just like to address what your concerns are and what the concerns seem to be against this sort of thing, if I identify as male and was not born genetically male, if I go into a bathroom and I commit some act of violence against a man in there and I leave the bathroom, I don't have the defense of saying, well, I identify as male, so it doesn't matter. Like, that's not a defense, right? Like, if I'm on a football field with your daughter playing because I identify as a woman and I attack her, very aggressively and violently, or she ends up injured because of an altercation with me, I can't after the fact say, look, I identify as a woman, so I'm out. It's not a defense. This is a protection. It's not a defense. Okay, so like this is something that acts as a shield for the person who is LGBTQ and not as a shield for a criminal after the fact. And that's something that I think, like, when we frame this idea in our heads, we have to be afraid of predatory people in general, right? It doesn't matter how they identify or who they are. We have to be afraid of predatory people because they're predatory people. We don't have to be afraid of specific groups of people containing predators because predators exist at a statistically significant amount in every population, and it's just about the same across the board. So there's no reason to think that trans people who make up about 1% of all people would for some reason also make up 90% of all predators. That's just not, like, math doesn't work that way. So just, like, remember that, and, like, let's not use these, like, fear tactics that someone else taught us to frame how we look at it.
I'm trying to get people that have Wait, there's should be on.
Or hello? Okay, it's working.
I totally agree with. I don't know where he went, but he was over there. I totally agree with him. It doesn't matter if you are, quote unquote, faking being a transgender person and going into, like, say I was a male, I identify as a male, but I'm some type of creep and I put on a wig, which I find very, very unlikely. It doesn't matter if you're putting on a wig or not. It's going to be a crime if you're, if you go into a restroom and creep on someone. It's going to be a crime whether you're wearing a wig or not. It doesn't matter if you're transgender. Like if you are actually transgender, it's still committing a crime.
I just want to try to get to the people that haven't spoken yet, so that's why I'm kind of jumping around.
Next week.
Where was I? Oh, no, here.
Do I need to stand up? I don't have to, right? Oh, thank you. Oh, okay. First, I'd like to say, as a parent of 2 Baltimore City school children, I am fully in support of this policy. I think that it's long overdue, and it's absolutely necessary. I have a couple of comments that I want to make about it. One, I think that the policy states that training is going to take place. I'd like a little more information on when that's going to happen and what training that's going to be, because we really need to make sure that just a policy in and of itself, it's a start, but it actually needs to be implemented properly. And we have a lot of schools and a lot of students that need this protection. And then secondly, I really want to reiterate what has been said previously, that this can be a life or death situation for transgender students. And not just about the violence that they experience because of their vulnerability, but about their mental health. They need to be able to come into school and feel safe. The suicide rates for transgender people, for people who are struggling with their sexual orientation are alarmingly high. And as a parent, I am deeply disturbed by that. And our schools need to be safe spaces for all students. And like other people have said, those that are really vulnerable are those that are transgender. If a transgender woman goes into a male bathroom, do you think that that student is going to be left alone? No. Their lives will be at risk. Their body will be at risk. They need to be able to go into the bathroom that is how they present. That's how they will be safe, and there's really no evidence that that's going to harm anyone. And we really need to stop talking like people who are experiencing something that they really cannot change. Because I don't know if any of you have felt like you wanted to change something about yourself and you really could not. It's not a choice. It's inherent. And they just need to be safe and mentally be able to identify as who they are, who they feel that they are. They're not making decisions about being a different gender. They just feel a different gender. And they need to be able to come to school and be safe because that's how they're going to get an education.
And actually, that was the perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about, so thank you. Just a couple of statistics just to remind you why this is so important. 34.8% of LGBTQ students missed at least one day of school in the past month because of feeling unsafe. 4 in 10 LGBTQ students avoid gender-segregated areas like locker rooms or bathrooms because of safety concerns. 55% of those victimized never report what happened to them because they're afraid or they feel like nothing's going to happen. And of those students that do report when something happens to them, 60% of them feel like nothing happens or they're just told to ignore it. That is not okay. Every child deserves to feel safe.
I think that what people are mostly worried about is their own child's health, and well-being and their safety in the school, but what you should really be thinking about is the LGBTQIA plus persons' well-being and health and safety, because they're easily targets of bullying. And I am a student in the Baltimore School District schools, and I know it can be a harsh environment. So it's the staff and the district's job to make sure that they feel safe.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much. I started my career as a Baltimore City public school teacher in 2011, and from a teacher's perspective, I remember being called the F word that rhymes with maggot, but it's not, on several occasions, and feeling unsafe as a teacher entrusted with the lives of over 100 students, and reporting that, and nothing was done about it. And I understand as the parent that training is going to be a part of this, and I emphasize the need for school leaders to be retrained and held accountable for this, and for the overall climate to be made safe and inclusive for educators as well, just as important as student safety.
So I just want to make sure that I clarify my earlier statement in terms of not equating transgender to someone who's going to go in and terrorize somebody else. So I just want to be clear that that is not what I indicated or stated. Everyone's concerns, one person indicated that it is our job to make other people feel comfortable. Not really. It is our job to be respectful to everyone, to be kind to everyone, not to go out and make someone else feel comfortable, right? If we are all kind to each other, it doesn't matter what you identify as, boy, girl, child, man, woman, female, it doesn't matter. We just need to be kind and respectful to everyone. But at the same time, my beliefs and my values should not be discounted because of somebody else's beliefs or their values. If I don't agree with what you believe in, doesn't make me wrong and make you automatically right. It just means that we have different beliefs. I agree with everyone. At the bottom of this, the most important thing to me is that my child is safe. I'm not saying that transgender people are not going to go out and go into bathrooms and, harass other people. That is not what my statement was. I was just indicating that now opens the door for others. And you guys can't speak for everyone in the United States of America or for the world for that matter. You may have some stats or some numbers from some places, or you've never heard this happen at your school. It does not mean that that is not happening elsewhere. So I just want to be very clear. If we are kind and respectful to everyone, regardless of what they are, who they identify as, none of this should matter. At the end of the day, it is about the safety of the kids, and that's my concern.
So I do want to interject here. I see all your hands. I'm trying to get to the people that have not yet commented, but I do just want to piggyback on what you said, and this is going to the equal employment opportunity realm, which a lot of this policy mirrors. This isn't about changing your mind whether something is right or wrong, whether something is morally reprehensible or not. What it is an introduction to a different way of thinking, or a different way of believing, or a different way of seeing the world, and understanding that it's okay. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different. It's slightly different, but that as a school system, we want to be inclusive of everyone. And inclusivity, by definition, means that which we are not familiar with necessarily, right? So it means I cannot say, oh, I believe that people that are of one race or of one gender or one religion are okay, but people of that religion or that gender or that race are not okay because, historically they've done this or historically that's happened, right? So it really, what this policy is, and one of the students I think had said something about it, is about how we treat each other. And it goes into that simple kindness, right? That's all it is simple kindness, nothing more, nothing less. Being respectful of one another, even if that means that we think completely different. Right? Because that is the principle of kindness, is that understanding that even in our differences, we can still get along, we can still be friends, we can still sit at the same lunch table and eat, we can use the same bathroom and be just fine. Okay, who did not? Sorry.
Hello?
We got them up there.
Yes. Hi, I'm Jamie Grace. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the community director of the Baltimore Transgender Alliance. Thank you. First of all, I wanted to say like a genuine heartfelt thank you to all of the students who have been sharing their perspectives. It makes me so incredibly hopeful to hear the perspectives of youth across so many different spectrums, both racially and across gender identity, and hearing that like, you know, most of the kids involved in these school systems are in support of this policy, are in support of their transgender peers, and are in support of sharing space with trans kids. So I wanted to say that as a first thing. And then I think I also wanted to address a statement that you said about the infrastructure of training. I think that that's a huge concern. The implementation of training these infrastructures is the only thing that will see this policy like make an effective change. Luckily, we have people like the Baltimore Transgender Alliance, like GLSEN, like the Pride Center of Maryland, who do this training work regularly for all sorts of universities, organizations, and we're experienced in bringing people of all backgrounds into awareness of their own gender and how to treat people of different genders. So we're ready when you are. We can handle it. We can train people. And I also want to say that we would rather do that work of preemptively training these institutions than have these kids who are failed by these institutions come to us when they have their housing eliminated, when they have their opportunities to go to college are revoked because their families don't support them anymore. When so many things happen, what happens is those kids go to community and we end up having to deal with it. So we would rather deal with this problem proactively by training these institutions and making them better for students of all genders than to deal with the students that slip through the cracks. Thank you so much.
So I just want to say that I'm very concerned about the privacy of all the students, and I don't think it's anybody's business to know what the genitalia of another person is. So there's never a reason why, including going in the bathroom, that would demonstrate what your genitalia is to anybody, whether you're cisgender or transgender. However, if you were to force somebody who was transgender into a bathroom that was different from the gender they present, the gender they claim in any sort of social forum, that is a horrible violation of their privacy, outing them. So please protect them.
Yeah, money. Okay, I'm going to go around like this. I see you, I promise.
So first thing is I really appreciate how many parents are in the room, and I just want to say, like, I know we're in, like, I was going to say mama bear, but that's gendered, a protective parent mode. And so, like, I just want everyone to, like, first just, like, take a breath and realize, like, we're all here because we care about kids. And, like, at the end of the day, we just want everyone to be safe and be able to access their education in a conducive learning environment. So, like, we're here for the same purpose. The purpose of this policy is to make sure that no one is deprived of that. So currently, we have students who literally have to injure themselves, like have to hold their bladder or whatever else all day because they can't, there is no bathroom that they are safe to go into. We have students who are afraid to even go to gym class because there's not a locker room in which they're not afraid of violence. So when we are putting this policy in place, it's with that in mind. It's not to change access to anything that is already guaranteed to some students. We just want that same access to safe environments for all of our kids. There's nothing in this that is going to make it right for anyone to harass anyone anywhere. There's nothing in there that allows that. It's not opening the door for that. It is literally just making sure that people can pee when they need to pee, and that they can change in private when they need to, and that they can access their education. Nobody is trying to do anything but access their education and not be jumped by someone, be called a slur by someone, or feel like they just can't use the facilities until they get home because it's not safe for them to do so. And you know, I would like to say that my school in particular, like, has gone through a big transformation because there didn't used to be policies, and because there is not a district-wide policy yet, it leaves principals to not know what to do. And so then even if we want the training, the question is like, well, what says that we have to do this? Oh, well, Title IX says we have to do it, but our policy in the district doesn't spell it out clearly, so principals don't know what to do. So this policy just says, oh, you're trying to interpret Title IX? Here's what it means in practical terms, so that principals know how to protect the kids in their school. So this would be tremendously helpful, and I know that my former principal who transferred to another school, but like, would have been so grateful to have had a document like this that says, just do this, this, and this. That's all. And you go, oh, I can do that. Like, it's just nothing says that yet. We have Maryland guidance, we have federal guidance, but until the school system says, like, these are the easy steps you can take to make sure your kids are safe, principals just don't know what to do. So this is just putting in place, and I agree, we need training, and we need every resource we can get. Thank you to the community organizations that are willing to come out and do the work. It's going to take time, but if we don't have a policy that spells it out so that we can point to something and say, oh, this is what the policy is, this is what our mutual understanding of the law is, it's too hard for us to go principal by principal, school by school, and have no one really know what they're supposed to be doing.
I'll get you, okay, because his arm's gonna fall off. Did I, okay, in the back.
You said that you was going around.
Yes, I'm trying to.
I'm trying. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to say that as a transgender student, I do not go to the bathroom wishing to seek harm and invade someone else's privacy. I just would like to go to the bathroom and not have to change my clothes because I cannot go to the bathroom and I don't feel safe going to the bathroom. The bathrooms are gross. Who wants to go into a bathroom to have something like this happen? Because let's be honest, they're gross. We don't want to. We don't ever dream of that because they are gross.
Go ahead.
Like, I have two moms, and sometimes I can find it hard to explain, like, how I was born, just because, like, and I can understand how for transgender people it might be hard to explain, like, how they feel about themselves. Like, how they feel that they are this gender, even though they were not born as that sex.
So what do you think we should do?
Like, I think this would be a really good start, but I feel like we should do more. Okay, so I wanted to clear up some things. Under parts of speech, learning English grammar, under Collins education, they is plural. Also, when we talk about the law, under COMAR, where it says companion document number 1, it also states that under non-discrimination guidelines for students transitions, it says the school system or the school may want to consider. Doesn't say you must consider. It also say under transition planning, it says several topics may be considered when a student is transitioning. So it may be considered to call a student they or we. It may be considered to allow them to, a transgender girl to play on a girls' team. So let's be specific on what the law actually states. Also by the federal, also by the federal guidelines, Trump rescinded the gender identity and left it up to the states. And the states, again, left it up to the school districts. So that's what Baltimore City is doing right now. And when I read about the testosterone levels of girls and of males, from 0 to 5 months of a male is 75 to 404. Females 0 to 5 months is 20 to 80. 6 months to 9-year-olds is 7 to 20. 6 months to 9-year-olds for females is 7 to 20. From 10 to 11 years old is 7 to 30. It means your muscle mass, masculinity. And stop cutting me off, thank you. And also for 10 to 11 girls is 7 to 44. It starts to drop off as girls get older. For guys, for males, is 12 to 13 years old, 7 to 800. For girls, from 12 to 16-year-olds, is 7 to 25. So as a male gets older, their testosterone levels are much, much more than a female, which also has something to do average. Okay, let's be specific. We're not going to say every female, and we're not going to say every male, because we know that there's XXY males. We know that there's XXX females. We know that there are defects in the biological makeup. You learn that you learn that when you're learning genetics and biology. What I'm speaking about is only testosterone and how your testosterone levels increases your muscle mass, it increases your breathing, it increases a lot of things when it comes to males. That's all that I was stating. And I'm talking about the average male and the average female. Yes, average.
So with regard to the law, Maryland State Department of Education, who is our jurisdictional oversight group, has said this is what we're going to do. This as a state agency, this is what we're mandating protection for. So all of the policy is written to MSDE's guidelines, which is available online. So it's not any different. So the rule is that each board gets to make the decision on how it's going to interpret MSDE's guidelines. This is a policy, again, it already exists under ACC. These protections are already in place. What JBB does is expand on that, so kind of like what Ms. Mooney was saying, so that there is a guideline, so that there is a template, as opposed to leaving it up in the air and guessing what did they mean what does ACC mean when it says protection? Protection against what? Protection for whom? Protection how? How does that look like? What do we do in situations with bathrooms? What do we do in situations with team sports, right? So that's why this policy, again, not reinventing the wheel, just taking MSDE's guidelines, very specific guidelines, and creating a policy based on that, or expanding on existing policy based on that. So that's where it's a little different. Okay. Where's my second microphone? Okay, go ahead. I know I had said you. Okay.
Yes, hello, it's me again. I forgot to introduce myself. I am Susan Schulman. I am a transgender female. Anyway, I go to Roland Park Elementary Middle School, and recently over the years it's gotten very gender inclusive when we have a gender neutral bathroom on the second floor. I use that bathroom a lot, and after I identified as female, I have never used the male bathroom ever since. But it is a single-use bathroom, so and it's the only gender-neutral bathroom there is. So if someone is already in there and you have to go to the bathroom, then it's really hard to if you don't feel comfortable going into your the gender bathroom that you identify with, then it's very hard, and the person in there if the person in there is going to take a while, then you are going to risk your bladder getting an infection or something, some serious medical condition. So for this policy to be introduced, it would be very good for people who don't feel comfortable going to the gender bathroom that they don't identify with.
I will say that currently in Montgomery County, there is legislation before the county council to make so that all future structures, all future buildings, school buildings, have gender-neutral bathrooms, that all their bathrooms be gender-neutral. There are many jurisdictions around the area who have gender-neutral bathrooms, period, right? So in Washington, D.C., for example, they're all gender-neutral bathrooms, which means typically, it's a single-use bathroom that has a urinal and a toilet inside of it. So that's usually what gender-neutral means. Okay. All right. Can I raise a hand? Okay. I'm going to get to people that did not talk. I know, Jabari, you didn't talk. I know Jabari wants to talk. Okay. And then I'll start again here. Okay? Is that what we'll do? Thank you.
Absolutely. Just real quick. Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Just real quick. I want to speak to the black people in the room. Right? This country is still not safe for us as black people, right? Still not. So I'm very, very cautious to equate transphobia and cissexism with racism. However, please remember, there was a time where someone didn't want to go to the bathroom with you, who didn't want to share a classroom with you, who made sure that you couldn't get an education. As black people and black families, we should be the beacons of hope for inclusion in education. We should be the shining example for what it means for someone not to judge us based on something about us. So I just want to say that I'm particularly embarrassed and saddened to hear some black folks in this room talk about not wanting to share the bathroom with somebody else, because we did that. That's it.
Hi. I just wanted to say that about some of the comments about what current law may be or what it is. I think we should always be looking forward to what could be or what it should be instead of looking towards what it is now and defending what that is now. Because as you said, the past laws have always been discriminatory towards somebody, and we should always be looking for a way to help make it more inclusive towards people who feel like they're outed.
You spoke.
I also think that these practices of oversimplifying people's bodies happen in a very analogous way. We talked about how testosterone, I understand being afraid of men. I have that real fear in my life too. But when we're talking about people's development, talking about people's breathing, talking about people's ability, talking about their nose size, talking about what dimensions, what calipers you can put up to somebody, it sounds like eugenics. That's what the practices are. That those same justifications were used to keep black people out of sports. Those same justifications were used saying, oh, black people grew up in Kenya so they can breathe more, and that's what makes them unable to play on a white team. And we now understand, actually, much of science hasn't come to our level of understanding that is false, that black people can play at the same level as white people. And if you are a white person who was playing sports before black people were admitted to your sport, you shouldn't even have any awards anymore because you didn't win anything,
Hi, everybody. My name is Jazz Barnett. I am the co-director of media at the Baltimore Transgender Alliance. My pronouns are they, them, because I am an army of swarming bees. Thank you. Anyway, I wanted to call back on the whole conversation about testosterone levels and chromosomes and stuff like that. let's talk about intersex people for a second. They are also part of the transgender umbrella, that they are underneath the transgender umbrella as well. Intersex people do identify as trans, and they do identify as cis. And intersex means that like a person can be born with a different set of genitalia, like, or they could be born with, right, like you may have heard that, but we don't talk about that. Not here, no. It's intersex. That is the, yeah, I understand. So an intersex person is a person that's born with like different, like maybe a different set of chromosomal like letters or something, or like a different testosterone or estrogen letters, or estrogen levels. Like it's different. Like people are different. People are born different. And that doesn't make them bad, you know, and it doesn't necessarily matter about what their levels are, what their chromosomes are. They're people. Like, just respect who they are. And if you're going to respect, you know, if you believe generally in respecting people and protecting kids, keep in mind that there are intersex kids too. Keep in mind about them. What about them? They might also have that same fear of going into the bathroom that best represents them, or being made fun of who because of who it is that they are. Come on now, like you should know better. Come on.
Okay, we're gonna go. You. Go.
Okay, so throughout this whole section, I just basically just be hearing the same general idea of how he or she may get hurt, or you know, this and that and that and this. So all I hear is really problems, but I don't really hear no solutions. And I feel as though that people should you know, at least like try like bring a group of people together and try to get an understanding, not just criticizing of the bat just because, you know, how somebody look or the way how somebody dress or even talk. So I should, you know, be hearing some solution instead of the same thing like, okay, she might go or he might go into the bathroom and get beat up. Who's trying to make a solution? Like, I don't hear no type of solutions, none of that.
Thank you.
As a white male, I use he and him pronouns, and I have 2 daughters in the Baltimore City School District. I want to say this is a lot of change, I would agree, and I'm proud of it, and I'm proud to see you in our district. Thank you for your work.
I just wanted to say that I feel like we're not getting very far focusing on like, oh, well, if this person was born a certain way, then they need to stay that way, because successful people don't end up being successful being who they used to be. They have to go through some type of transformation. And these people just happen to be going through their transformation early on in life so they can be more successful sooner on in life. So I feel like if you want Baltimore City to do better in general, you should let them like change and transform as soon as possible rather than keeping them stagnant.
People have walked up to me and asked if I was a boy or a girl. I've always told them that I was a girl, and most of them have asked things like, why do I not have long hair, or why do I not wear earrings? I always tell them the reason is because I can feel the way however I want to feel, and even though I was born a female, I am able to cut my hair short, and I am able to make my own decisions.
Thank you. All right, go ahead.
I kind of had a lot to say, so I had to write it down so I could basically, you know, be better at saying what I have to say.
I just want to interject. We're going to have to wrap it up really quickly, so go ahead.
No disrespect, but if you're concerned about muscle mass, do you think that a girl who is extremely stronger than the rest should not be allowed to play a girls' team just because she's really strong? I feel like instead of debating on who's right and wrong, we should be thanking all transgenders, period, for coming out the house showing who they are, knowing they were going to walk into something they may not want to hear or see, but still woke up this morning taking the time to express themselves. There are females who naturally have higher testosterone levels than other females. Also heard some people Thank you. I also heard some people physically activities encourage the produce of testosterone, I'm sorry, I can't really say it. Thank you. And keep in mind that some females box, play football. Some others do martial arts and other exercises a lot. We can argue all day about science and testosterone levels. At the end of the day, none of it matters. What matters is students are safe, period. This bill is literally about ensuring safety to transgender students, not using testosterone levels to decide who gets to be safe or not.
Is this working? Okay. I just want to address all of the people of like faith in the room who are religious. Because I'm Muslim, I have been born and raised Muslim. I'm gonna stand up. I usually don't speak because I work with these students, and I usually just like for them to hear. But I think people of faith have not really spoken up specifically about how their faith drives their decisions or how they feel about this. And as somebody who is Muslim, like I understand feeling like you like don't want to necessarily give up your personal beliefs or your religion, especially when you're Muslim, because Islamophobia is so rampant, right? Like in the similar ways that anti-blackness is, right? Like you don't want to feel like you have to sacrifice your identity for other folks. And at the end of the day, like that's not what this is about. And the important thing when it comes to faith, I think, is no matter what your faith is, in the same way that you believe whatever you believe about gender assignment, you also absolutely believe in safety of people and like people's right to exist as they are. Even if you don't believe that it's okay for yourself, even if you don't personally adopt that belief, like there's not a single religion, there's not a single faith that I know as a Muslim or friends who are Christian that like doesn't value safety. So understand that like oftentimes we're cherry picking what parts of religion we want to stand by, and we're forgetting that like all of our religions and all of our faiths prioritize safety above all of these things for other people, and like us respecting other people and who they are and being allowed to enter the space. Also understanding really quickly that even if I am Muslim, I still have privilege as a cisgender person. And if I, as a Muslim, am prioritizing safety and I deeply believe in the value of safety based on my faith, then my priority is going to be a transgender student or a transgender person who is unsafe in the same exact space where I am always safe. Like I'm never afraid to walk into whatever restroom I'm going to, unless I'm scared of like an actual man, because like cisgender men are a lot more dangerous than any transgender man I've ever met. So.
Hi everyone. I've written what I wanted to say down because I get very nervous public speaking, but so there's something to be said about being on the right side of history, and some of this rhetoric today makes me a little bit nervous because it is the same rhetoric that was used to promote racial segregations in schools. As an African American woman, it's important to me that I don't ever make someone feel isolated, especially school children, because everyone deserves to be identified how they feel. They deserve to feel safe wherever they go. So even if it's something that you don't yet understand, take a moment and ask yourself if you're on the right side of history. And if in 50 years from now, you can look back and say that you were. My best friend just recently came out to me as non-binary, my best friend of 10 years, and I'm working really hard to make sure that I get the pronouns correctly and use they and them. And sure, sometimes I make a mistake, but I am actively trying to do this correctly. And I just want to say, like, as a millennial, I'm really proud of this next generation. You guys are killing it. And you're going to be the ones that usher us older folk into the next age. So.
You're older. What am I? Go ahead.
So I just
This is
want
going to be the last word.
Okay, so I just also wanted to say, so people who are against this act, I just wanted to say, like, so for your children, if they identified as trans or non-binary, you wouldn't want them feeling uncomfortable going to the bathroom they were assigned birth at, unless maybe you would, but I don't see why, because you want them to feel safe, you want them to feel respected, and you want them to feel like they can be themselves. So I don't know why you're making other children who cannot control how they feel go somewhere that's going to make them feel uncomfortable and get harassed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elen, and I am the co-chair of the Baltimore City LGBTQ Commission of the Education Advocacy Committee. One of the things that I wanted to ask the audience is for us to continue this work and this conversation. This conversation is not over as of tonight. It won't be ending after the vote next Tuesday. And we need to continue this conversation because it's nice to see there are so many members of the community interested about this work. In addition to this, I've said many times before, trans people have used the restroom. They will continue to use the restroom because I've always said this, until cisgender people stop having children, you cannot stop producing them. So until we take a vow of, chastity, which I don't think is gonna happen, so therefore, when it comes to the restroom conversation, however people wanna put it, when you gotta go, you gotta go. So, and it's going to continue, and it's a fact. Times are changing. Changes are hard. Yes, we bark, we scratch, but we deal with it anyway. So, with that being said, looking forward to the next conversations to come, because this is the beginning of a battle of the kind of city we want Baltimore to become. What kind of community we want our children to go to schools in, what kind of community we want to buy houses and invest in. Because this is not just education. This is simple economics, and it's simple about the well-being, not just me, not just you, but to all of us.
Okay, so we're gonna end here. We actually went beyond our time, and so I really appreciate very much all of you coming out, all of you participating. I love being able to debate, to actively discuss differing sides. I think it's what makes us a great people, right? Collectively, is the ability to be able to say, we don't see the same way, but we can talk about it. We don't have to be disagreeable to disagree, right? We can understand, as long as that there's understanding that we're not always going to see the same, look at the same picture and see it in the same way. But that's the beauty of being a community, right? Is the ability to see things in a different way and to have that expressed to each other so that we all develop a kaleidoscope appearance of our life, right? This policy is to include people. It's not to exclude people. It's not to make things difficult for some and easier for others. It's to level the playing field like any discrimination policy is. It is about leveling the playing field, making things equitable for everyone. And that includes our transgender community as well. But just to reiterate, this is not the transgender policy. This is the sex discrimination students policy. This includes protection for sex discrimination, for sexual violence perpetrated by anybody against anybody, right? Students. And it's about gender identity and sexual orientation. That is what the policy is as a whole. It is not specifically the gender identity or the transgender policy. So again, it is a policy to elaborate on what already exists. It's to lay a better foundation, a stronger foundation, and a better guideline for our administrators, for the district, for our teachers, and for our students. So we will continue this conversation, just not tonight. We have to wrap it up. We will be having a second reader on the policy next Tuesday. If you'd like, you can drop me an email. It's Escabrera01. Make sure you put the 01 because the Escabrera without the 01 gets a little bothered by all my emails. All right, so 01 is my email. So please feel free to email me. If you want to take my number down, I can give you my number, but not in the microphone. I won't say it in the microphone. So the ask was anybody in support of the JBB policy to please stand. All right. Thank you all. Good night. Does anybody know where the sign is? Where's the sign-in sheet?
Want to know where the sign-in sheet is? Is that it?
The sign-in